Good evening, all of you, and welcome to another session, webinar on venomous snakes of India. So this is actually an initiative from two NGOs who is working in Kerala. It's called Kottayam Nature Society and Alapi Naturalistic Society. They started this. We just started, just to give a talk on some frogs and dragonflies. This is almost 40 days back, 38 days back. So we done pretty good. I mean, so far we, we done 37 different talks. So, so today we are lucky to have Kedar Bide with us. I mean, he's going to talk about venomous snakes. So this is actually a continuation of another talk. Also, he'll be talking about the snake bite mitigation and the snake bite management in India. So it's actually he'll be clubbing. So and Kedar done lots of works. I mean, before we all started studying snakes, he's been started studying taxonomy and their documentation and all. He is one of the best in the field. And thank you so much for Kedar to agreeing.
Thanks, David.
And over to you. I think you can take over from there.
Thanks, David. Good evening, friends. The subject is very interesting. I know everybody is interested in snakes a lot, and particularly venomous snakes. The expectation will be very varied. There are more than 100 people here watching this, so everybody's expectation to understand about venomous snakes will be very, very different. So probably you can ask more questions latter part where I can answer as per your requirement. But the whole presentation, I will be more talking generally, very, very general subject about what are the different venomous snakes of India and little bit about venoms. But the first foremost, everybody's requirement today is how do you identify venomous and non-venomous snakes? You know, everybody has that question posed to me and many of my friends who are working in the snake field for generation of years, you know. But let me tell you frankly, you know, if you are just going into the field to watch snakes or you saw a snake and you want to identify it. So the question is it possibly to correctly make visible snake identifications? Okay, sometimes, but lot of conditions apply to it. I will tell you why. There are some species of snakes like this Himalayan pit viper, Gliodes himalayans. There are a lot of different coloration of these snakes are found into the field, you know. So if you are going to do just visible identification or visual identification of a snakes, it's very difficult to just look at different pictures and identify them, you know, because there can be a species with lot of different color mobs and design probably finding in the field. Or there are a lot of different species, but they morphologically and visually resembles each other a lot. We call them cryptic species many times, you know. It can be a different species complex. So by just looking at them, if you decided that, okay, I will visually identify snakes, it's not going to be easy. There, you need to have certain background in a snakes for that particular matter. Now, there are certain snakes look alike. Some are venomous and the other are non-venomous, but they are look alike. So visual identification of snakes, I advise you all, till you don't have more expertise and other things, please don't do visual identification from photographs and others. There are a lot of cryptic species. There are a lot of similar looking species. There are a lot of species which looks very differently into some different geography areas, the same species. So we go back to, is it possible to correctly make visual snake identification? If I say yes, that may be kind of a wrong. So I will say maybe. But if you have already identified all the snakes of that particular region using taxonomy and are familiar with them all. So if you are already doing a work and identifying snakes around you, it's possible for you to go and visual identification you can do about it. And provided there are no cryptic spaces around you and not too much is dependent on your identification, like life and death, either victims or you are. So you need to be dead sure when you do visual identification and there is no life or death depend on it. But if you are going around in your areas, you know the snakes, you have already identified them earlier, then probably I think visual identification makes sense because you know those snakes. But if you are in completely unknown area, you have never been there and you don't know about different species and different species complexes found there, probably I will advise you not to go on a visual identification. So most of the herpetologists or the people who work, ophiologists as we call, they work with taxonomy tools, that is scale count, maxillary bone, mandibular bone, you know, hemipenis, ventrals, dorsal scales. I'm not at all going to teach you all those scalation today or tell you. If you need more, you can attend different workshops which is done by experts, because it cannot be learned in 1 hour. Okay. So visual identification, I will suggest avoid it. If you don't know whether it's a venomous or non-venomous, be careful with every snakes, take precaution with every snakes, as they can be risky to you. So don't go and on your identification sometimes and just go and handle the snakes. Be always careful and cautious whether it's a venomous or non-venomous. Don't get bitten. So this is a Malabar pit viper. I think 5 or 6 different color morphs are there. If you look at those just as a visual identification, you will probably identify 5, 6 different species. But it's a single species with all taxonomy tool. Ophiologists, herpetologists had identified as a Malabar pit viper, though it's a different visually differences are there. So my suggestion to you at the start only, visual identifications, don't depend on them. Now we are going back to our topic. We are going to talk about venomous snakes today. So the foremost, we always tell everybody, a lot of snake people and everybody, they tell differences about poisonous snakes. People say poisonous snakes and non-poisonous snakes. I work a lot in rural areas, and generally people use these terms poisonous snakes, non-poisonous snakes, or jahrila hai, bina jahar wala hai, So poison is a very general term. The dictionary says that any substance which can harm living organism, either absorb or introduce, they are called as a poisons. But venoms are very, very advanced toxins. They are biological toxins produced in specialized glands and injected through spurs, stingers, spines, or teeth by those organisms. So those chemicals the biological chemicals are called venoms, and the animals which are capable of injecting them are called venomous animals. So generally we try to always correct people, don't call them poisonous and non-poisonous. So poisonous and non-poisonous may not be completely wrong in a larger sense. But if you want to be perfect and you want to be right scientifically, then we should call them venoms and venomous snakes. Now let's see generally why do snakes have venom. The venom has evolved, primarily as mean of subduing prey and catch it, basically for catching a prey and digesting it. It's not evolved for defense. Like if you take say honeybee or scorpion or anywhere, their venoms is generally for defense, because when they sting you, you get immediate pain and then you run away from them. So if a particular venom is made for the defense, then probably it is very painful immediately. But in snakes, the venom is not like it's so painful like you are going to run away immediately, So it's not basically evolved for defense, but it's evolved for catching its prey and digesting its prey. It's a modified saliva. It's a mixture of proteins and different enzymes, helps in digestion. For many years, we talk this terminology as non-venomous, mildly venomous, venomous. Particularly, these are on the snakes which do not have fangs, those who have rear fangs, or those who have, front fangs. On those, we use all these terminologies. But if you look at evolution today, the data, the research which has gone on evolution is really, really interesting, So venom is evolved nearly 200 million years back in a group of reptiles, particularly a clade called Toxicofera, which today we call them squamata also, scale reptiles. So there are iguanas, there are monitor lizards, and the snakes all are evolved from a same clade called Toxicofera. So there is one school of thought and one theory which says that venom is single origin theory. Like venom originated just once among all Toxicofera approximately 170 million years ago, and then diversified into wide range of venoms you see today. Like first the basic reptiles, they develop the venoms, and then different lineages take it to a more developed venoms, But there is another school of thought also with certain researchers says that it's an independent evolution of venom in different lineages of snakes. It's not that there was one basic venom, but different lineages of snakes have evolved venoms differently. But all this evolutionary data and venom evolution data proves that probably all snakes had venom, and many of them have lost their venom in evolution because their prey has changed, their adaptation has changed. So they have lost the capability of production of venom and injecting venom into their prey. through the evolution. So many years back, when I started around 2 decades back, we used to always think that venomous snakes are the most evolved creature, all were non-venomous and then they have evolved venom. But last 2 decades or last decades particularly, all the research which is happening with proteomics and venomomics and other molecular biology studies, it shows that probably all the snakes at the start probably had a venom, and many of them have lost it. So once we understand this whole evolution, probably you can see the diagram here on the right side talks about the serpent is how it has been probably evolved. This is Brian Fry et al. And the whole group study. It's a very interesting study. If you have time to download this whole thing and read it, you will really love to work on this whole venom evolution theory, So when you get into this whole venom evolution in today's all the snakes, particularly we call the venomous snakes, broadly the venoms have been classified into neurotoxic, hemotoxic, and cytotoxic. Then there are in between myotoxins, cardiotoxins, but probably very broad, very, if you classify them. So you have neurotoxic venoms, which blocks the electrical stimuli between nerve cells. You have hemotoxic venom, which destroys your RBCs. And, the whole clotting factor is ramped up. So there is coagulation pathy. Or you have a cytotoxic venom, which they have digestive juices. They start destroying tissues and muscles. So probably different species have mix of this whole complex of venoms, Though the venom has been evolved nearly 200 years back, snakes are the one who took it and developed it in the present most complex chemical structure available on earth, And so you have to give it to a snakes to develop such potency and a complex different venoms in today's world. It's a very complex mixture, and within different populations of the same species, you probably will have a differentiation into venom structure also. Because venom type is depend on generally the prey and the habitat where that prey is hunt. Now I'll give you an example. If you take a sea snake, it catches a fish in a vast ocean. Okay. So the habitat is also very important. So if a snake bite a fish and fish don't get paralyzed instantly, probably the fish will run away and snakes will lose the prey. That's how, because of the prey and the whole habitat, the sea snake has to evolve its venom in a such a way that if it bites a fish, it immediately instant paralyzes there and the prey cannot run away. Similarly, all the neurotoxic venoms are developed because the prey may be the fast running prey and the snake has to stop their running, otherwise they will lose the prey. That's why the neurotoxic venom probably would have developed. In hemotoxic venoms, it's probably helps snake more for digestion than the exactly immediately catching its prey. So if you look at the vipers, they bite a prey and the prey run for some time or go somewhere and then lie down and the viper goes and then take the prey. So similarly, cytotoxic venoms, cardiotoxins, different myotoxins, they help snakes into catching its prey and digesting it. That is its major function. Defense is not a major function of a snake venom at all. So after looking at this whole venom structures, how they are evolved, what are the different kind of snakes groups are there, then the differentiation between venomous snakes and non-venomous snakes gets little blurred. The new data also shows that a lot of non-venomous snakes, which we call non-venomous, has a toxic saliva. There are certain toxic components in their saliva which helps them in digesting their prey. There are certain rear-fanged snakes which has a rear fang and a toxic saliva, which is quite toxic to their prey base like birds or frogs, but may not be a toxic to humans. So this whole differentiation between venomous snakes, non-venomous snakes is little blurred today with all the research which is happening into that. So let's get back to what we will call as a venomous snakes today. In our talk today, I'm not talking about generally theoretically, but in our talk, which kind of snakes we'll call a venomous snakes. So the snakes which has this whole venom apparatus, they have, their fangs are like hypodermic syringe. There is a barrel, plunger, and needle. Similarly, in snakes, in their jaws, there is a venom gland. There is a jaw musculature as a plunger, and there is a fangs as a needle. So they have this whole hypodermic needle kind of whole apparatus, which they can use to produce venom and inject it into their prey. So these venom glands are true venom glands in these all particular elapids and viperids. The fangs are modified teeth. We'll see there's more in details. Don't get too much into technical things. So I'm just explaining you there on the teeth structure. There are 4 types of snakes: uglyps, which have no fangs. The first this whole, your normal all rat snakes and other snakes, pythons, they have only this whole teeth line, but there are no fangs as such. Then you have opistoglyphs. In this group, rarely there is a teeth on each side which is large in size. It may be grooved or may not be grooved, but it is not connected to the venom gland. But there may be certain glands, oral glands present there, who secretes venomous or toxins kind of saliva, which can be then go when the snake bite a particular prey or chew on it, the venom is flowed into the puncture mounds. So those are opistoglyphs. We have cat snake, we have sand snake, we have wine snakes, we have some of the killbacks. All those are ophistoglyph snakes, which has a large 2 rear teeth there. Then you have proteroglyphs like in sea, which are in elapids like cobras and kraits. They have a fixed fangs. Their front teeth are developed into a fang. It has a grooves in it. It is connected with the venom gland by venom duct. And when they bite, venom is injected into the prey's body. The 4th group is solenoglyphs. This is very, very advanced and more elaborate venom injection system. Here the front fangs are on the whole maxillary and mandibular bone, and it can be folded inside, it can be moved alone. Also, most of these fangs, the snakes keep regrowing them. Every 10 days to 60 days, different depending on the species, the fangs are regrown throughout their life. So that's such an advanced teeth structure snakes have. So today, when we are talking about venomous snakes, I will be talking for this talk about venomous snakes is the one which can produce venom into their glands. They have a specialized teeth or fangs to do the delivery of venom into a body of prey. I am not talking about opistoglyphs. Those are rear fanged snakes, which doesn't have a fangs and they may secrete certain toxin saliva. So I'm not going to talk about them today. We'll be talking only about those elapids and viperids, which has venom glands and the fangs. Otherwise, I have to talk about hundreds of snakes today. So let's get back to our Indian scenario. We have around, at the moment, with the checklist which JEDESA has published in 2018, and then there are some new reports of pit vipers in 2019 and 2020. Probably we'll have a 66 species of venomous snakes across India. That plus in the bracket, I will come into the whole last of our presentation. What is that +1? But at the moment, through the checklist which is published and the new reports which has been published, we are around 66 venomous snakes in India. Let me take you through. This is a very, very confusing, like a small child has drawn this diagram on our Indian map. But it's very interesting to see this whole kind of distribution. So we have a king cobra here, which is found throughout the Western Ghats. Then it is also found through the Orissa, eastern side, went into the foothills of Himalaya and the whole of the northeast. It is also found in Andaman Nicobar. So we have this whole complex of king cobra across these whole geographies, Probably they have a different species, but somebody need to more do taxonomy work on them and phylogeny work on them. But these are distinct populations of king cobras in Western Ghats, in eastern, northeastern region, in foothills of Himalayas, in Andaman Nicobar. So these are the whole one species which is distributed throughout. There is another one species called banded kraits, Bungarus fasciatus. It has a distribution from say Gadchiroli in Maharashtra side towards the central India and then east and northeast completely. So that whole only one species is found in that area. Then you have one pit viper across our central peninsular India, till the Bihar, Uttar Pradesh to down to Maharashtra. Till some northern Western Ghats parts, we have a bamboo pit viper in between. So these all are single species which has a very unique distributions across India. But more than that, we have around 5 species. This whole pink area. These are across found throughout India. They are your Naja, binocellate cobra, your Bungarus therilensis, common krait. Slender coral snakes are found in west and eastern part and northeastern part of India. Then you have 2 vipers, that is Russell's viper and a saw-scale viper, found throughout India in most of the regions. So you have these 5 snakes which has a, you can say, throughout India distributions. Some of them are not found in northeast, like a saw-scale viper, but common krait and the Russell's viper are also found in the northeast. Binocellate cobra is not found in the northeast. Then there is another cobra called Kauthia, the Naja Kauthia, which is found in the east region as well as some part of Bihar and all those areas. You have only one species of Ichthys carinatus chochoreki here in Gujarat, Rajasthan border near Kutch and the Jaisalmer area. Then we have two species of Bungarus, the crates. Today probably we call them Sindanensis or a Wali, but it's all, you can say, CF Wali or a CF Sindanus. There is a lot of work is needed in both the species to get them their taxonomic classification right. So Sindanensis, one of species, or CF Sindanensis, is reported around Pune area, and one Wali, what we call today, not Wali, maybe CF Wali, is reported from the eastern region of India or West Bengal side. So these two need more work. Then if you come to northeast and the western Ghats, there are a lot of endemic. You have here 11 pit vipers and nearly, lot of crate species which are endemic to east and northeastern part of India. You have around 4 coral snakes and 5 pit vipers endemic to the western Ghats. You have 4 particularly vipers, all pit vipers, and 2 elapids, all in Andaman and Nicobar. They are endemic there. They are not found across India. If you go to up to Himachal or Himalaya, Kashmir and Himalaya, you have one elapid that is, Central Asian cobra, which is reported from Himachal recently. And then 3 vipers, which is also the 2 pit vipers and 1 true vipers, that is a Levantine viper. It's also found in the Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. So you have a lot of endemicity. At the same time, some species are found in many of the Indian areas. If you go to sea snakes, we have around 20 sea snakes, across whole Arabian Sea to Pacific, whole sea here. You will find around 20 species of sea snakes around. So all those constitute to those 66 species. You have 4 cobras, 1 king cobra, 6 coral snakes, 7 crates, 20 species of sea snakes, 3 true vipers, and 25 pit vipers today. And I know for sure that at least another 3 and 4 species will be added in another 1 or 2 years, because the work is happening in those areas on those some species. The references for all these is ZSI checklist and 2 new reports of pit vipers from Northeast India. So let's get to the whole these crates found in India. This is found throughout India except the Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh probably, but Himachal I think has this. This is Bungarus ceruleensis. This is common Indian crate. You can call it. Lot of mortality is reported because of these snake bites. This is banded crate or Bungarus fascillatus. As I told you, the distribution is from Gadchiroli, Maharashtra, towards the east and northeast part of India. There are not much bites reported of these snakes, except there are some confirmed bites and deaths in Mizoram. But the venom studies, which was done by IISc recently by Dr. Karthik Sunagar's lab, also shows us that venom of this snake, as it eats other snakes, is evolved for killing snakes. It doesn't have that much mammalian toxicity in it. That's what the data shows. This is Himalayan crate from Sikkim. There is a lot of work has been done into Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim by Vishal Santra and team. Thanks. So a lot of these photographs have been, the credits have been given there, but I'm thankful to a lot of my friends for providing these pictures. So this is a Himalayan crate, very, very beautiful snake found in Sikkim. This is black crate Bungarus niger from eastern part of India, West Bengal and Jalpaiguri and all those areas around. This is Bungarus lividus. This picture is from Jalpaiguri, lesser black crate. So there are these lesser black crate, all are from eastern parts and northeastern part of India. This is Andaman crate, endemic to Andaman Islands. A little bit black and yellow band on it. Not much bites or data we have about this crate, about its mortality rates or whether it bites humans. What happens after that? We don't have much data. This is the crate found around Pune region, which we today call Bungarus CF Sindanus. Probably a completely different species. We don't know about it. Somebody need to do more work on it. It's happening, but at the moment it's not published. It's maybe under publication. It has, it has 17 around the body scales. In common crate there are 15. The records of bites of this snake shows that our antivenom probably doesn't work against bite of this snake. So after this crates, you have the cobras. One is a spectacle cobra, which is found throughout India. Uh, you all know about it. It has its hood. It has these marks on the hood. Can be a lot of different marks I have seen throughout different geographies. So many of the times, as snakes are cold-blooded animal, and they need to depend on external the external factors for their body temperature control. Snakes like to stay in a cold and little abundant environments, and that's how these are territorial snakes. So probably a cobra remains in the same area, and all those superstitions about treasure, the treasure is found where cobra is found, and all those things have come out because of its hood, and its it takes its stand against when it is disturbed probably, and its distribution is also across India. The whole historical figures like Kalia, Vasuki, or a lot of stories about snakes is around cobras. You also get melanistic spectacle cobras. They don't have any mark. They are just black in color. Morphologically, scale count wise, phylogenetically, they are same. They are Naja. You found them in Maharashtra part, Madhya Pradesh part. You have also found them in Himachal Pradesh and other areas. The venom is variable in different geographies of the same species. So probably in many of the areas, our antivenom works less or doesn't work against some of the cobra bites in some of our Indian geographies. So this is melanistic cobra, Naja only. Then you have Naja Kauthuya, monoclere cobra, which is found in east and northeast of India. Also some parts of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, in those areas. We always used to say that we do not have a spitting cobra in India. But the recent research by Wolfgang Wüster and Vishal Santra has shown that the monoclere cobra has a capability to also spit the venom. They have done slow motion videos of this snake and prove that the monoclere cobra can also spit the venom to the short distance. Then we have this Central Asian cobra, which is reported from Himachal. They always used to have a distribution in Kashmir and Punjab areas, but this picture is from Himachal of Vishal Santra, and it's reported from higher elevation of Himachal. Then you have this Andaman cobra, Sagittifera, Naja sagittifera, which is found only in Andaman. Again, no data on its venom and fatalities and bites. So we have these 4 species of cobras across our Indian boundaries. Then you have king cobra. This is from Andaman. Today we are calling everything Ophiophagus hana only, but probably these are different whole species complex of king cobras across India and needed more work. So you can see the coloration and everything here of Andaman cobra. And this is from Arunachal. Very, very little different. This is a cobra sitting on the nest. That's the only snake where female builds its own nest for laying eggs, and then it protects it. It is so well developed that when the snake understands that egg hatching time has come, the snakes leaves the nest and go far away, because if the king cobra female stays there, probably can eat its own young ones, because it's a snake eater. So when the hatching time comes, the female cobra leaves the nest. After all these crates and cobras, there is a very, very interesting group of snakes, venomous snakes we have in India, called coral snakes. And it's completely data deficient on its venom, on its bites. We do not have any data much on it. This is a very colorful Calophis bibroni from Karnataka. Then you have Bedom's coral snake, Calophis bedomi, again from the southwestern Ghats. So we have 4 species, nearly 5 species of coral snake found into the Western Ghats. You have this Calophis melanurus, or a slender coral snake. Many years back, we used to find them in quite a large population in coconut groves of Mumbai. But with all the development and everything is happening, we don't find this snake anymore in Mumbai. Then you have Calophis nigrescens, striped coral snake, again from Western Ghats. You have Castoi's coral snake, or Calophis castoi from Western Ghats. So you have these 4 endemic Western Ghats coral snake. Then Calophis melanurus, slender coral snake, is found across most of the part of west and eastern part and a central part of India. Then we have McClellan's coral snake, Cynomacrurus, which is, picture is from North India. I think the paper is under publication, but in the Smith British Fauna of India, it is also reported from Northern India, from many places. The venom reports not from India, but from Thailand and other places proves that this snake has a very, very potent neurotoxic venom. And there are certain pathological, and the fatality may not be reported yet, but there is a lot of cases are there with certain harms done in Thailand and other places. So after coral snake, we have a huge group of sea snakes. Nearly 20 sea snakes are found all over coastal waters and the main seas. I don't have pictures of all. I probably have only representation of 4 snakes here. So this is a hook-nosed sea snake. This is a short sea snake, and then you also have yellow lip secret, that is Laticuda, and you have a common secret, Laticuda laticudata. So these secrets, they are egg-laying, so they come on a shore to lay eggs as well as breed. But otherwise, most of the snakes, sea snakes, are viviparous, and they give birth to young ones, and they hardly come on a shore. Otherwise, they always stay in a sea. Sea snake venom is evolved, it's an instant paralysis in the prey. They bite. Their fangs are very short. Their mouth opening is also very small, and fangs are not really situated at the front of the mouth, but little inside of the mouth. So the bites of sea snakes are very rare. Probably somebody has to really make an effort to get bitten by handling them. Otherwise, a lot of fishermen in our country, when the sea snakes comes into the nets, they just take it away and throw back into the water. There are hardly, in my knowledge, there are 2 cases of snake bites on the western coast of India. I don't have any data of the eastern coast and Andaman Nicobar, but there is one case many years back was near Mumbai, and there is one case recently around 4 years back in Kerala. And in Kerala case, even without antivenom, the paralysis, by putting a patient on ventilator, they could save the patient. Generally what happens, antivenom which we use is for neutralizing free flowing venom into a body. But the venom which is already acted in your body need to be treated symptomatically. So if there is a respiratory paralysis, you need to put a patient on ventilator till the body flushes those toxins bound to its neural synapses. But the free flowing venom has stopped working because of antivenom, but already worked venom on your body need to be treated symptomatically. So hypothetically, without antivenom, in neurotoxic venom, particularly when there is a respiratory paralysis, if you keep a patient long on ventilator by taking care of all other health issues, and allow body to flush the toxins out, hypothetically it's possible. But there is a lot of other side effects also happen with venom, so don't try doing that. So these were 4 species of sea snakes I showed you, but there are 16 which we don't have much photographs of them. I do not have many photographs of them. After the sea snake, this whole group is Elapidae. There is, Elapidae and Hydrophini, 2 subfamilies. Elapidae takes care of cobras and kraits, and Hydrophini takes care of all sea snakes. They all have neurotoxic venoms, but they still have a mixture of cardiotoxins, cytotoxins. In certain cobra population, we have also found hemotoxins in India. So venom is a complex mixture, but predominantly this whole group of Elapidae is a neurotoxic venom. Now let's go to Viperidae, which has all vipers in the Viperini family, and Crotalini family, which has all pit vipers across India. So the Russell's viper is snake with the throughout distribution across India. The coloration, I will show you. If you go on visual identification, probably you will say that these are different species. This is from eastern part of India. Where you come to Mumbai and Maharashtra, you will get this kind of Russell's viper, where the spots are connected with each other, where this is like, different spots like tulsi leaves, which we traditionally call as how the snake Russell's viper looks for. The maximum bites and complications happens into a snake bite in India is probably due to Russell's viper bites. It has a highly hemotoxic, cytotoxic in certain cases. Also some neurotoxins is also found, and throughout India, different population varies in their venom construction a lot. So these are two Russell's viper, different, designs. Then you go to Dachigam and around Srinagar in Kashmir, you have this Microviperella labetina, which is a Levantine viper, which is found in, higher elevations in Himalayas, particularly in Kashmir, Dachigam and Srinagar around. Then the third true viper we have in India is the saw-scale viper, again throughout India distribution, Ichthys carinatus. We say at the moment two subspecies, Ichthys carinatus and Ichthys carinatus chochakeri, which is found in Gujarat and Rajasthan, as I was telling you earlier, distribution. So this is found throughout India, where this chochakeri is a little larger in size, quite than the Ichthys carinatus and found in Kutch and part of Rajasthan across. It is also called as carpet vipers in many of the areas. Again, this is a species complex and probably more work is needed to define its position into taxonomy. Now, after these three true vipers, the pit vipers is the largest species in numbers in venomous snakes in India. The certain species are highly medically important. They causes a lot of bites, coagulopathy, fatalities also, like hump nose pit viper in South India, or a septatrunalis in Himachal and in those places, or Himalayan pit vipers in Sikkim. They cause a lot of bites and they cause a lot of coagulopathy and problems with people. So this is bamboo pit viper. This is the only snake probably a pit viper found in peninsular India. From northern Western Ghats to the Bihar, Uttar Pradesh borders, you will find them. Then you have Malba pit viper in our Western Ghats, from Amboli to Goa and all those areas. Very beautiful snake. Nearly 6 to 8 different color morphs has been identified into this snake. So again, visual identification is difficult. You have to go on a taxonomical tools and scale counting to identify them properly. Another Western Ghats medically important snake is a hump nose pit viper found in Goa, northern Karnataka, down till Kerala. Lot of human bites happens, and there are reports of fatalities also in those areas. Our antivenom today, which we have, is against 4 venomous snakes. Those are common cobra, Russell's viper, saw-scale viper, and common Indian crate. And they are also produced from the venom from South Indian species. So many times this antivenom is not completely effective in many of areas in India. In Northeast India, in Himachal, in many of these other species like hump nose and other pit vipers, it is not at all useful. So probably we'll talk about it day after tomorrow about further on antivenoms. This is large scale greenwheat pit viper from again Western Ghats, Macrolepis. Horseshoe pit viper from Kunnur, Ooty, Coimbatore, in all those areas of Western Ghats. Some of the specimens shows this horseshoe shape, yellowish, whitish band on the neck. That's why it is called as a horseshoe pit viper. But we have seen some of the specimens which doesn't have that mark so predominantly to be visually seen. Now, after this whole Western Ghats pit vipers, let's move to northern India. In Himalaya, we have this Gliodes himalayensis, Himalayan pit viper. And the second one, Himalayan white-lipped pit viper, Trimerceres septentrionalistis, or Crypteleutrops also. I am not getting into this whole taxonomic, where some people call this genus as a Crypteleutrops and some call them Trimerceres. That's why I kept into a bracket Crypteleutrops also. So this whole genus septentrionalis is also called Crypteleutrops septentrionalis or Trimerceres septentrionalis. These both snakes, particularly Himalayan pit viper and Himalayan white-lipped pit viper, both are very, very medically important snakes in Himachal Pradesh. The recent data by bites projects of Vishal Santra and others have given a very big information on these kind of bites in Himachal. Then we have the Sikkim pit viper or Proterobothrops himalayensis, described from the Sikkim area. Then you have mountain pit viper, Oophis monticula, for across northern part of West Bengal and northeast. Other than that, there is a whole this green cryptic species of green pit vipers across northeast. So this is a spot-tailed pit viper, Trimerceres erythraeus. from northeast. Then you go to Pope's pit viper, Trimeresurus poperium. Then you have Medonensis. All these whole green pit vipers are there in northeast. You also have Protobothrops, different species like Protobothrops jordani from Arunachal. Then you Protobothrops jordani xanthomelas is again another from the yellow spotted Jordan pit viper from Arunachal. You have Protobothrops kolbaki from central Arunachal. Then back to these green pit vipers, we have Trimeresurus gumprechtii described from northeast called Gumprecht's pit viper. We have another Protobothrops macroscamatus described from northeast, brown spotted pit viper. Then there is a new species described in 2019 by Rohan Pandit, Raman Nayan, Ashok Captain et al. Is Arunachal pit viper, Trimeresurus arunachalensis. Then recently from the whole taxonomic development in India, the recent paper is of Jishan Mirza, Harshal and others, is about Salazar's pit viper, Trimeresurus salazar from Pake National Park. So there is this whole green pit vipers, a lot of cryptic species are there. There are a lot of Protobothrops in northeast, endemic to the east and northeastern part of India. Then you move to the Andaman Nicobar side. You have this white-lipped pit vipers. Again, the Albolabris is also reported from northeast, and it is also reported from Nicobar Islands. Probably it's a complex species complex, and more work is needed further. And probably the Nicobar Albolabris may happen to another new species completely in near future. But at the moment, literature says the Nicobar is also Trimeresurus albolabris, and northeastern Albolabris is also Trimeresurus albolabris. Then you have Trimeresurus andersoni in Andaman pit viper. In Car Nicobar Islands, there is a Labialis. So these are all again endemics to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Cantos pit vipers from Nicobar. So now we come to this after finishing. I do not have pictures of around 2 or 3 pit vipers with me. One is a Hutton's pit viper from South India. I do not have picture of Yunnan pit viper from northeast, which I couldn't get anywhere. Otherwise, I would have shown it to you. So this +1, as I was telling you, there are a lot of snakes which are rear fangs or rear large enlarged tooth, and they have certain oral glands like Duvernell's gland and other rectal gland and certain labial glands which produce toxins. So we have this redneck killback Rhabdopis subminiatus found in northeastern part of India. Though it's from Colubridae family, it's a colubride snakes, like other snakes, but it's a rear fanged or rear. The fang actually, we should say the large teeth, the rear large teeth snakes. And there is some fatal reports of people after this bite in Thailand. There are certain reports of symptoms of venomation in Guwahati and other areas of bites of this particular snake. So presently this snake is also upgraded to a venomous snake, because there are fatality in humans. It has a large teeth, and the venom is also quite toxic to blood and other cytotoxic effects. But as they don't have fangs, they don't inject venom into prey's body, or they have to chew. If they bite somebody, they have to chew it. So the large teeth make puncture wounds, and the venom flows into those puncture wounds from the glands above. It's not injected. But there are, as I say, there are little concerns with fatalities and other harmful effects of its venom. It's recently upgraded as a medically important venomous snakes across its distribution, particularly Thailand to northeast of India. That's why this +1, though it's not defined into our fangs, venom glands, venom duct kind of venomous snakes, but it has become a medically important snake now. We also have a lot of similar species in wine snake, cat snakes, in some killbacks, in sand snakes, in some racers, which also has a rear fangs, large rear teeth particularly, and have a toxic saliva, which is very harmful to their prey like birds and frogs and other species, but not to humans yet. But probably future studies also may add some more snakes into a venomous snake list. So it's very difficult today to say that these are the venomous snakes. So probably our modern definition will say medically important snakes and non-medically important snakes in future. We should prepare ourselves for that. Before we go into all the questions and everything, there are two resources which are the great resources to study snakes in India. One is the Field Guide of Snakes of India by Romulus Whitaker and Ashok Captain. They are also working on new editions, so in near future you'll get a more updated Field Guide of Snakes. Then if you go to Indian Snakes app called Serpentis, it's a wonderful app to use into the field for identification, for reporting snake bites, to find out treatment for hospitals to treat snake bites, resources on snake bite first aid. If you download this app called Serpent on your phone, you'll get this kind of first page where there is a field guide. You can find out about different snakes. You can interact with experts about to sending pictures about identification of snakes. There is a snake rescuer list. You can find out a snake rescuers. If you are a snake rescuer, please register on in this app and start reporting your rescue, so you get distribution of snakes. Every day we get distribution of snakes in a backend across India. What are the different species which are rescued? So it all helps in prevention measures. It all helps in defining certain treatment protocols. It all helps in epidemiological studies. There is a treatment hospital map also, which directly takes you to the nearest hospital. You have a lot of resources available for snakebite first aid there. You have other resources like, if you want to go and do educational programs in schools, you probably get resources on that app. So this app is very, very useful. And if you register and start using this app, it will help us also for data generation, and it will help people on ground about snakebite management, to reporting of different snakes, and ultimately a coexistence of snakes. I have my own personal website where there is a tab called Snake Conservation, where there is a lot of information on snakes of India and snake bites. You can find it there. So these are the resources all you can use to understand more about snakes, snake bite scenarios, and education and awareness. I think probably David will start taking questions now. And then get the chat window somewhere.
Hello, Kedar, can you hear me? Sorry, I was.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you, David.
Sorry. We just opened the chat box, so those who have questions, they can come and ask the questions there. Thank you so much, Kedar. It was wonderful.
Okay.
So
I think a lot of people have said, can we have a little louder audio? Earlier, okay, it's done.
I mean, I think it was clear. I think most of
okay.
it was clear.
No more question yet.
Okay, there is a question from Facebook, so I'll start with that.
Okay.
Why are sea snakes so venomous?
There is nothing called so venomous. All venomous snakes has a venom which affects their prey immediately. And all the data which we talk about, this snake is more toxic than this snake is more toxic than this, is all done in the lab against rats, mice, or rabbits. So generally, toxicity of venom in a field condition is depend on how much venom is injected. So there is nothing called very venomous and less venomous. All venoms which can harm us are always serious venoms. A sea snake venom particularly is more fast acting. When we say it's more toxic, I don't think so in that way it is more toxic, but it's very fast acting. And as I told you, the venom depends on the prey and the habitat where that prey is caught. So a sea snake has to catch a prey immediately without losing it. That's why that venom is highly active against muscles. You can call it a myotoxic, and it affects the mitochondrial energy generation a lot. And there is an instant paralysis. So when we start using words like why it's highly venomous, probably we need to consider all these other aspect of a venom also. But it's a very highly fast acting venom, because that is a need of that snake to catch its prey in that particular habitat.
Okay, we'll take one more Facebook question, then we'll go back to here. It's from Jos Louis only. Interesting. Have you ever got bitten by a venomous snakes?
Yeah, I was foolish enough to do some foolish things long back, and was bitten by binocelate cobra. So probably it's like, we have these stories of old the Valmiki became out of Valya. So we all have done this kind of foolish mistakes in our lives, and probably we have learned it that way, and we have learned more, and we are trying also explain to others not to get beaten. But we have done certain foolishness in our life. I was bitten once, and then due to my mistakes, nothing to do with snake, but it was completely my mistake. I hope, Jose, I gave the answer of your question.
Kedar, can you go through the chat box?
Yeah, I'm going through
I'm
that.
having some issue. I'm having some issues with the network. Vidya, can you take over from there? If you're there.
Okay.
Sure, David.
So,
So we
Varun, Varun Vaze had asked, please give him some information on poisonous snakes as well. As I said, the poisonous snakes is a very general terminology, which not exactly 100% wrong, but we probably use the right terminology called venomous snakes. And there are no snakes after eating them, you get harm. So it's not like a poisonous food. So there are no poisonous snakes as such. But for a layman language, throughout my last so many years, I don't go to rural areas in villages and try to correct them from poisonous to venomous so much. But probably, Varun, for you, right word will be venomous snakes. How to count scales of snake by Sai Shailesh. See, scale counting is a technique. There is a dorsal scales, there is a ventral scales, there are scales around lips, there are scales on the head, and probably it will need another talk to tell you how to count scales, what are the different scales. But if you have a field guide of Snakes of India, then there it's given about how to count scales. And if you go to, I think Serpent's app also has that. So you will learn it from there. Or if you have any local snake expert who can teach you that, you can learn from them. But it's not a single 1 hour learning. You need to understand it. You need to practice it. Because, even after doing so many years, sometimes we make mistakes while scale counting. And it's not only scale counting. After counting scales, you have to go back to literature, analyze the historical data, match the scales with them. If that is not also giving you a solution, you need to go into teeth structure, you need to find the hemipenis. There are a lot of other tools also in taxonomy. So it needs a whole day workshop kind of to teach it. But Sai, if you are up to it, you can contact those who do it, or you can find a workshop where you can learn taxonomy. With current development model, what's the fate of snakes today and tomorrow? Dhananjay, two things. Yes, the snakes which needs a very, very, kind of forest areas and other things, they will have a huge challenge. The snakes which are arboreal snakes need a continuous tree covers. Now, if you just take a urban locality example, probably 20 years back, the number of vine snakes, bronzeback tree snake has gone down now because there is no continuous canopy or a tree cover in the towns. But the snakes like rat snakes, checkered killback, Russell's viper, cobras, their number looks to be the same or increase, So there are certain snakes which you can call kind of a commensal snakes, they like staying around us because we give them the rats. And we give them enough hiding space in our foundation and around it. So the species wise, probably they are sturdy and they will get adopt. They are on this earth for 200 million years and they have adopted throughout and developed their different adaptations. So some snakes will have a challenge, some species who needs larger free habitats, a very different kind of models. But there are certain snakes which thrives in urban environments, and then they will find the niche segments, and because there is enough food available, enough hiding places available, they are going to be around us. So in the end, we need to start learning how to coexist, how to sort out snake bite deaths. because it's not that because of our development all snakes are going to die, but some species may like these urban developments and stay around us for long. हाँ, ऊपर से लूं नीचे से लूं? So Chinmay Deshpande, is there any record of wall syncrete from Buldana, Khamgaon region and in Vidarbha? Chinmay, the whole this CF walls or syndenances need a further study. You know, probably there may be specimens available in those areas. I don't know about it, but sometimes even I get little worried about calling it wall syncrete or a wall scrate or just syncrate. We need more further studies. It's a whole species complex, and I think we'll need further studies on that taxonomically. I hope taxonomists start working on them soon, or they're already working. I'm not actively into taxonomy, you know, so I don't know whether people are already working on this whole species complex of walls and sind, but it needs further work taxonomically. So probably if you have any specimens in Buldana and all those which is not fitting with common crate, you can call it a CF sind or CF wall scrate or completely new species also it may be. There are more. Okay, Dhananjay, you have also asked Bartha snake not mentioned in Kedar's presentation, which I suppose is find himself from AP. May I know more about this, as why not included today? Dhananjay, it was included in today's presentation. The scientific name is Kaulbaki spit viper and Protobothrops kaulbaki. The Bartha is a very, very local name into local people. So that name is not used in the presentation, but Kaulbaki pit viper was there in presentation, which locally is called as a Bartha. Where is up or down? Anyway, tell me from there only.
There's a question from Pranath, Kedar. In
Yeah.
species which are endemic to collect relatively small area, can there
Hmm.
be a variation in composition of venom?
To tell Pranad exactly, the studies were done, particularly if I take an example of Mumbai, okay, as you also know, you are from Mumbai. Do you take Mumbai to Vasai is a small area? If you take it as a small area, we have found variation of a cobra venom between Mumbai and Vasai. So probably, you know, it all depends on prey and the population isolation into that particular area. And when we talk about evolutionary development into venom and variation, it is probably a result of thousands of years. You know, we may not be able to understand in 10 or 20 years. But in a small endemic area, if those species are not too much foragers, but remain in isolation and there are some natural barriers and different prey base, it can happen in a small endemic area. A snake can show variation in venom if there are difference in prey and difference in habitat.
Okay, there's another question from James Bebin. You said that even venomous snakes has venom even in its saliva.
Sorry, non-venomous snake.
Probably he must have meant non-venomous snakes.
So some, not all, but the research shows that some non-venomous snakes which we have has some toxic components into the saliva, may not be harming us, but it is very toxic to the prey base, which like if they are feeding on birds, some of the snake saliva has been found toxic to birds. Some of snake saliva has been found toxic to frogs, you know. So the snake's venom, as I told you all, that it has been developed to catch prey and digest it. So the different snakes, but probably in the evolutionary rule, those snakes had venom, but they start constricting the prey and they have lost their fang mechanism, or they have lost the teeth to inject venom, which is not needed for them. You know, so they have lost the mechanism to inject. But basically, there are a lot of snakes which has been found certain toxic component in their saliva today. As evolution tells us that all the snakes used to be venomous earlier, and many of them have lost their ability to either produce venom or inject venom. So if you take salivas of many of the snakes, you will find certain toxic components which is active against the prey of that snake. may not necessarily will be active for human beings or affect human beings.
There's a question. What happens when the fangs are pulled out of a snake?
If they have just been pulled out only as a fangs without disturbing the teeth bone structure or other things, snakes regrow fangs. They shed their fangs also regularly and regrow throughout their life. The record shows that some snakes even just takes 10 days to regrow the fangs. Some snakes have taken 70 days to regrow the fangs. So the snake fangs are, so when somebody says that the fangs are removed, if you remove a fangs, the fangs can regrow again into a snakes. So what most of the charmers and others people used to do earlier, they used to not only remove the fangs but also cut the venom duct or burn the venom glands. But snakes doesn't need to survive for long without the venom and venom glands, But fangs can be regrown regularly into the snakes. Many times you'll find a snake with existing fangs and a new grown fangs beside it. So there is a two pair of fangs sometimes has been seen in vipers.
Okay. Next question from Punacha. They say Australia has the most number of venomous snakes. From your data, India seems to have more. Are all venomous snakes lethal for humans?
Not all venomous snakes are lethal for humans. So that's why I said when we talk about human mortality and morbidity, we should call certain snakes as medically important snakes and not just a venomous snake. Not all venomous snakes are fatal, but many of them, gives you morbidity also, like gangrene in hands, particularly pit vipers. You get swelling, a lot of coagulopathy. It may not be fatal, but you need to go to hospital and do a treatment. There are many snakes which we don't know anything about their venoms and how it acts, particularly coral snakes. We do not have any more cases there. We don't have banded crates cases more to understand. But in Australia, when they say the 10 most venomous snakes, all those again experiments are done against mice and rats or a rabbit, So the venom act on a human body is all depend on what kind of venom variation that snake has, what kind of activity your body can react to or your body can withstand to. So it all depends on a lot of other factors, So this whole definition of most venomous snakes and most dangerous snakes, probably most dangerous snakes across the continent probably will be Russell's viper if you look at the bites, number of bites and number of fatalities and the problematic complexities in the snake bite treatment. I will say that probably the most dangerous snakes today is the Russell's viper. But let's not compare between different continent snakes. Australia has a lot of venomous snake species and they have good antivenom. They have a less population. They have a very fast health system. That's why the mortality rates are very low in Australia, better antivenoms. In India, we have a huge population, lot of different habitat and practices. Antivenom efficacy is also challenging in many of the areas. So we have more mortality and morbidity. But let's not compare between, like India has more snakes. Yes, India has a more mortality and morbidity to venomous snakes particularly, and we need to do a lot of work on it. But if you look at number of venomous snakes, then probably the medically important snakes out of those 66 maybe are 12 or 14, not more than that.
Okay. There is a few questions on snake bites that we'll probably take it up on a day after. So
Okay.
We'll stick to the usual questions here. There's a question from Wahiba. I have heard that cobra, if caught from a place and introduced in a faraway place away from its territory, it will be starved until it reached back to its territory. Is it true?
Yes, there are certain truth in that. Many of the snakes are territorial, and we have certain records of showing that when you release a particular territorial snake far away, the snakes try to go back like cats to the study is still further needed, but certain indication shows that snakes try to go back to its original territory. When we do all these relocations and release snakes some far away, the chances of that snake leaving is very, very less, because that snake, there are other snakes into that territory. They will be challenged. That snake doesn't know where to hide, how to live there. The prey base may be different. So this whole relocation and releasing snakes far away need to be stopped. And we need to find out the solution to ultimately coexist. But at the moment, don't release it too far snakes if you have to release. Release it nearby areas. but still chances of that snake surviving with today's research indicates that the chances of that snake surviving is very, very less.
Okay, there's a interesting question from Rahul Ratan Chauhan. Can snake get envenomated by its own venom?
Not by its own venom, but there are certain reports like other groups, probably elapids may not get, envenomated by elapid venoms or their own venoms, but probably a viper venom can affect them and vice versa. But these all are certain, very small studies, and we need more further studies to understand. Probably if we do more studies, we'll also find out more treatment protocol or more development into how to stop snakebite venomation in humans also in the end. Because if the elapids doesn't harm elapids, they must be having something in their body which doesn't, react, because those are ultimately proteins and enzymes. But yes, same group of snakes generally withstand venom from the same group. But there are examples where, a king cobra feeding on a viper and gets bitten on a viper, nothing has happened to king cobra also. So we really don't know factually to tell you exactly, Rahul, about, but same group of snakes generally doesn't affect the same group of snakes.
Okay, there's a question from Vivekanand Kumar. Nowadays, a few videos in YouTube about a snake named redneck killback, and a few species are venomous as well as poisonous. Please tell about it.
I again go back to my either snakes, they can be venomous. The poisonous generally we call poisonous frogs or other poisonous animals where you eat them and you get, effect or a poisonous effect on you. They are generally called poisonous. But in snakes, they need to, by certain means, inject those chemicals into a prey body to affect. So we still call them venomous. That's why the redneck killback will be called as a venomous snakes and not as a poisonous snake so much.
But I have a same question to add on a bit, Kedar. I think what he's talking, some of the rhabdophis species from Malaysia, no, they actually feed on all those toads and save the poison in their nuchal gland, and that's they use it as a kind of. I heard it. I read
for
it also.
Defense against the predators.
Yes.
Okay, then I not read so much references on them, so probably I will not be able to answer that.
Okay, no problem. How many species in India mangroves? Any mangrove species in India?
The venomous ones?
Yes.
Probably, we have these rear fang mangrove snakes, in Sundarban mangroves and other, which is, we can call it a kind of mildly venomous.
Okay.
It has a rear large teeth, but the Russell's viper and cobras, at least I can tell you about Mumbai, are very adaptable snakes. And I have found both of them in Mumbai mangroves. So they are not really a mangrove snakes, but they are adapted to that environment in Mumbai coastal regions, in mangroves in Mumbai at least. I have seen both Naja Naja and Russell's viper quite happily living in mangroves of Mumbai.
Okay, there's another interesting question from Vinod Venugopal. Heard that crate bites are not felt usually till it is really late. What make it bite painless?
One is the crate fangs are very small. So many times it's just a feeling like a, ant stinging or something like that. Or sometimes if you are sleeping, you will not understand also that somebody is bitten. And the venom is also, it has a delayed action little bit. It's quite a potent neurotoxic venom, but takes some time to affect. So many times, also most of the crate bites happens in the nights. They are nocturnal snakes. So the bite happens most of the time in the nights. You don't understand in sleep what's biting you. And probably by the morning, if there is a venomation has happened, you don't have time to go to hospital, and the death happens. But crate bites, as their fangs are very, very small in size as such, and they bite in the night when generally you are sleeping, and you don't understand. It's very, very, most of the snake bites initially are painless, but because of the cobras and Russell's viper, it has a little big fangs and they injured you. Crates doesn't do that much big injuries, and this whole story, I would like to take this opportunity to say that of those two big fang marks, you keep seeing those big fang marks if something bites you. but many times you can only have a scratch and still envenomation can happen. You can have only one hole through your shoes or clothes. So don't depend on those two big marks like a fang marks to find out whether you are bitten by venomous snakes or not. But particularly crate, the bites are very small, but still venom can be injected, and you don't feel sometimes in sleep that what is bitten you.
Okay, there's a question from Ravi. Yes, I think what he meant was, do young snakes also venomous like the adult ones?
Yes, as the snake is come out of an egg or a bone, they are immediately venomous. They have a venom system. Probably young ones have a lot of variation in their venoms also, because in young ones their prey base is different. It has been generally observed that the young ones has a more potent venom than the adult one. It has been also observed that the dry bites chances into young ones are very less, where adults, when they bite as a defense, many times they don't inject venom at all. But in young ones, the dry bite chances are very less. Probably the temperament issue, I don't know. But young ones have the same venom, or maybe sometimes potent venom than adults.
Okay, there's a question from Ashish. What to do when bitten by a mildly venomous snake? Is it okay or not take any treatment?
Probably you will keep the patient under observation with a mildly venomous snakes. But if it's a redneck killback, you should go to a medical faculty and be under observation. With other mildly venomous snakes, which we generally call like wine snakes and cat snakes, we do not have that much, harmfulness to human beings in India at the moment. Probably we'll do more study, we'll find out it more. But if there is a little swelling and everything, you can just wash it with soap and other thing, and not the venomous snake bite, but the mildly venomous when there are a lot of teeth marks are there. So the other infection doesn't happen. So take normal wound care for that. But you, as it is, if you go to hospital, so there are no antivenoms or there is no treatment available for mildly venomous snakes as such. So probably stay under observation, and if you have a kind of a stress of that, then probably go to doctor and take the advice with that. But generally, in my saying, if you are bitten by a mildly venomous snakes like wine snake or any other thing, and you don't have any other symptoms, you can probably just take a proper wound care, like you do disinfections and other things, and stay as it is.
Okay, there's a question from Kunal Patil. Hello, sir. Can you talk a bit about Indian egg eater current status and venom?
Again, Indian egg eater is a rear fanged or a rear enlarged teeth belong to that, and there is no information about venom and other thing. So I will not put it as a venomous snakes at the moment. But the distribution is so we'll put into non-venomous snakes at the moment. Distribution is into central India, like particularly Maharashtra, MP border, Amravati and around. It is found in literature. It has been also reported from northwest Bengal and other areas. But presently, it is found around Amravati and all those areas. You will probably get more information from the people who have done study on the Indian egg eater snakes.
We'll take some more question from now Facebook. Do you want to can you just go through the chat box and get
That's
there
what
is
I'm doing.
any relevant question? Do you want to answer it?
One is Rohan Matthias has asked, why did you say Hamnose pit viper is medically important? What do you mean by medically important? Medically important means those snake bites causes fatalities or serious wound to the people who gets bitten. So Hamnose pit viper bites have been reported mortality or fatality in certain cases. Also, there is a gangrene and certain other morbidity like amputation also has been happened and reported in those cases. That's why they are medically important. How venomous is the horseshoe pit viper? What kind of habitats are they found in the Nilgiris? What is the expectancy of a Russell's viper? I couldn't understand what is the life expectancy of Russell's viper. Sorry, it's too much small text. So one is a horseshoe pit viper, as it's a venomous snake, but there is not much venom studies has been done with that. It is found all across Nilgiris, particularly in the rocky areas, on the cliffs and slopes of the Western Ghats a lot. Life expectancy of Russell's viper, we have only data through captivity, and in captivity it has been reported to 10 to 12 years of Russell's viper. But now there is a good study happening with a radiotelemetry in Karnataka by Jerry Martin under Jerry Martin projects, and probably will get more data on Russell's Viper live through that project. If you guys are interested, you can probably write to Jerry Martin project or try to go and volunteer there if they are interested. It's a very, very interesting study happening in Karnataka. So the snake is considered venomous only if the venom is fatal for human. LD50 type. Generally, we call medically important snakes not as a LD50, but any kind of effect. If it's affecting human, they are medically important to us. LD50 is studied for more on a venom research and anti-venom effectiveness and other things. But today, calling something venomous, some mildly venomous, some non-venomous, is also sometimes creates a problem into people's mind. It's a very complex information, and I want to simplify it. So for me, the venomous snakes are the one which are medically important or has a venom gland and duct and a fangs to inject. But all those other snakes which we call so-called mildly venomous, I call them non-venomous when I talk with people in the rural areas, because they will not understand all these scientific terms of mildly venomous. They generally ask me what affect us, जहरीला है या बिना जहरीला है उतना बताओ. So generally I keep telling to all my awareness programs and education that there are two types: those who affects humans and those who doesn't affect humans. Why do we not make antivenom for hump nose? Yes, very right questions, and I think we all should ask it to the developers and the government. We should have antivenom for hump nose. Many times, with whole our superstitions and rural areas, monoclonal or what you call the monovalent antivenom has a challenges because people cannot identify snakes. So what we have today is a polyvalent antivenom against 4 common venomous snakes. Probably we need to add hump nose and produce antivenom in the similar form for southern India. We can have antivenom for septentrionalis, Himalayan white-lipped pit viper from Himachal. We can have a lot of different antivenoms for northeast because whole species complex is different. So we need a complete revolution into antivenom or a treatment protocol in India. It's happening. It's still slow, but it's happening.
There is a question from Facebook, an interesting question from Ashok Sengupta. If you see the geographic distribution of king cobra and a spitting cobra, we see that king cobras are not found in Africa and spitters are not found in Indian subcontinent, while both are found in Southeast Asian island. How this has happened after great tectonic shift and continental formation, something like that?
With present research of Kauthia, the Naja Kauthia, also spits venom, I think we will not be able to tell anymore that we do not have spitters in India. There is a nice video. I can ask Vishal to send it or put it on Facebook, which has been proved that in certain cases, the Naja Kauthia also spits venom, like spitting cobras. But about distribution geographically, about king cobras and African, yes, there can be difference. Like there is another venomous snake family called, mole pit viper or called Atractespidi. It is only found in Africa, but not anywhere in Southeast Asia. So probably tectonic shift has helped division of that. But we need to go really in evolution to find out which lineages goes anywhere to understand that more. Similarly, we have a boomslangs and other snakes in Africa, which are also rear fanged. Similarly, we have these redneck killback and other things here. So probably venom evolution can tell us more information on this thing. But yes, certain islands have a very different kind of endemicity and fauna. So probably the tectonic shift has helped them in isolating there.
Okay. There's a question, interesting question from Indrajit. If there was one venomous snake you don't want to be bitten by, which one would it be?
I don't want to be bitten by any venomous snakes. I will not choose any one of that because then people will start getting little, guard. They don't put your guards against all venomous snakes. All are venomous, all can kill you. Keep that kind of mentality, then there will not be accidents.
True. Probably, do you want to go for a few more, 2-3 more questions you can take, and probably then we can wind up.
There is Ravi S. Is it correct that a cobra, snakelet, or a young snake? Okay, this we have already taken. What is the term about old word snakes, boas, pythons, vipers, and old word snakes? See, these are generally in the evolution. The new word snakes are generally called all those neotropical snakes. Which is found in America and South America. And the old word snakes are those Asian continent, African continent, and probably a European continent. But it's just a term, so don't worry about it. What is the typical prey of sea snakes? Sea snakes preys on a wide. They have a fish. They have octopuses. They have certain other, small mollusks also. Sometimes they feed on. So it all depends. But very less studies has been done on feeding habits of sea snakes. So probably we'll need lot of studies on sea snakes on Indian coastal waters. At the moment, at least 2019, we have a published checklist of marine snakes of India by S.R. Ganesh and others. But the more studies are needed, I think, on the sea snakes of India. Again, Girish Chaure Singh would love to know more about Bertha. Probably, David, if people want on Bertha, we can do another talk on Bertha separately.
Which
Or you
Bertha?
can go to my blog and read my story of Bertha.
Okay.
Which antivenom is available in India? I will talk about antivenoms more day after tomorrow.
Yeah, probably we can take up those questions day after. Yeah.
Green killback similar to red neck killback in terms of venom. Green killback is again a rear enlarged teeth, so you can call it a mildly venomous, but we are not aware about its venom capability. But redneck killback is proven to fatal to humans, where green killbacks, there is no record of any kind of human fatality or any kind of problem to humans yet. Again, there are some questions about antivenom which we'll answer day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
Please comment about the release of some rescued snakes. Wish to understand any protocols to follow as snakes have same territory. General protocol is, if you can possible, do not release rescued snakes more than 100 meters away. But I can understand if it's a medically important venomous snakes like cobra or Russell's viper, probably you will not be able to release it near the people where you have found it. So you need to release it little away. But while doing that, follow certain protocols. Don't release snakes in same habitat over every month. Probably with local forest department, you can find out different habitats, have some release policies locally chalked out to release snakes. Say like in January, we'll release in this habitat, February. Also, see to that you are releasing snakes at the activity time of a snakes. If it's a nocturnal snakes, don't go and release it in the afternoon or a noon. Go in the night and release it. Yes, there is a SOP. There is a proper gadget SOP of a Maharashtra Forest Department about rescuing and releasing snakes in Maharashtra. Similarly, other states have also worked out on their SOPs. There is we all are working on one national SOP also, which probably will be able to finish it soon. But till that time, the Maharashtra SOP, which has been published by Department of Forest, which we all have worked on, it's available on my website in the resources in snake conservation if you want it, or just message me on my Instagram or my Facebook page and I will send it to you. I will mail it to you.
Okay, I think we can. Any interesting question you want to take it up?
Pranad has asked about venom composition and any studies to link this to DNA and inheritance. Yes, Pranad, there is a lot of studies happening about DNA, inheritance, adaptations, gene duplications, and how venom has evolved. Let's take it sideways. I can send you a lot of papers on it. The IISc Venomics Lab is doing some fantastic work in this case. Any other? Okay, there is Sarath Champati. Hi Sarath, you asked about what could be the reason for most snakes to lose their venom when there is a need for paralyzing prey, like in a rat snake, which can be more efficient in catching its prey if it has venom. Probably over the years, rat snake has worked out on its constrictions more. So there are certain, we don't know what happens in thousands of years or millions of years in evolutionary history. but probably there is a recruitment point happened or certain thing has happened where they started constricting their prey, and because they started constricting their prey, they were not needed to catch its prey by venom. Yes, so probably it has happened through because it's a very fast moving snake, and the rat snake also can move as fast as its prey, and probably the snake find less energy in constricting than production of venom in the evolution, so probably it has lost its venom. But we don't know till we do more studies on proteinomics and venomics of or a rat snake evolution in their lineages with phylogeny. But probably I think that because it's a faster moving snake and it can catch its prey by constricting, it has lost its venom in evolution.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just scrolling through. Okay, sorry. James had once asked that you said that even venomous snakes has venom. I think that's particularly non-venomous snakes I was talking about. The snakes which we call venomous with the fangs and a venom glands, they have a venom into their venom glands, not in other saliva factors. Can you see, David, any other questions?
I think we covered most of the questions, and quite a few questions were related to the snake bites and all. That's we'll take it over day after.
Okay.
I think we can wind up now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kedar. It was
thanks, David. Hope it was useful to all of you. Please send your feedback if possible, if you need any more info, or if you think that something can be more improved also.
Okay. So anyway, Kedar will be coming back day after to talk about more snake bites and mitigation and all. So please join us with the same time. And also we have an amazing talk coming up tomorrow about fishing cats of India. So by Tiasa. So anyway, on behalf of both the Nature Society and Alleppey Natural History Society, we extend our thanks, and thank you so much, Kedar.
Thanks, David. Thank you all for attending it.
Yeah, thank you so much, all of you. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Yes,
thank you.
to all. Thank you.